All right. Thank you for that. I swear, it's like Murphy's Law. Every time, every single time that I do this. So let me start over. My name's Frank Lavinia. You can catch me at the following URLs. And apparently, I installed a new driver, which is defaulting to my default microphone, which I need to go in and fix that. It's very easy to blame Windows, but I don't necessarily blame Windows. But I did catch it about 2.5 minutes in this time, as opposed to last time. So, with that out of the way, a couple of things I want to do. Kind of interrupted my train of thought here, but we had a great podcast. I'm just here to announce that I'm very excited that we had a great podcast episode with Ina Tokoro Sela on approaching data challenges with generative AI, which I realize is a far more search engine friendly title than what I originally was going to call it, on unraveling semantic ontology in AI readiness, which is a much more of a mouthful and much more of a um, concern, or something that's really the same thing, right? Because when you're dealing with generative AI, and there was a post actually earlier today on LinkedIn. Let me see if I could dig it up. Um, bear with me. But while I'm searching that up, wanted to show everyone that I have updated the price here for the book Candace and I put together, called Foundations of Sentient Marketing. It is now $7.99 on Kindle and just a few more dollars for the print version. I highly recommend you pick it up. Makes a great gift. This is the cheapest price we've offered it. I figured I'd put it on sale for the holidays, and uh, it's a good read. There is going to be a second edition. I probably shouldn't say that, but in the interest of transparency, there is going to be a second edition coming out soon. And with that, here is the post to which I refer, and I will share this tab instead. This, boys and girls, and AIs of various levels of sentience, is why this matters. Now, again, very colorful a metaphor here, but basically, if there's garbage in your data, or what the emoji says it is, then there's going to be garbage output, right? Garbage in, garbage out. It's a maxim as old as time, or at least computer science and information theory. But as you can tell, if you do this, if you have garbage going in, whether it's ML, whether it's AI, whether it's generative AI, or more to the point, agentic AI, right? You can do a lot more damage with agentic AI, um, kind of putting in this garbage information in there. So all of which is to say, realistically, we need to really think about this. And that is actually a big part of the um, discussion that we had with Ina. And I misspelled her company. Oh, actually, it was the AI. Actually, the transcription service did that. It's a Lumix. Definitely check it out. They discuss these big risks here. The cost of managing and owning in the TCO of generative AI, but also this fact here that just because you have generative AI means that you can create a bigger mess here, not just with generative AI, but agentic AI combined with it. And I think that the problem here isn't what's in this middle column, right? The problem is the garbage data, right? And that makes data engineering more crucial than ever. It makes security assessments more crucial than ever. And thinking about this. So there is actually another episode coming at Data Driven before Christmas, where we're going to talk about security risks in AI. And I had a guy on the show that was red teaming LLMs and generative AI solutions, and he had some interesting insights into this space as well. But I think that while security is kind of a topic of its own, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, that is data quality, right? If there's crap in your data, there's going to be crap on the output of the product. You have to have a crap filter, basically, right here, um, and this layer here, right? That's the way you fix this. Not easy, but data engineering is more important than ever. And with that in mind, highly recommend you check this out. We had a great conversation with Ina. Awesome person, really cool conversation. And again, apologies if my AI got this. My AI got this wrong. So I'm going to talk a little bit more. Speaking of data engineering, I wasn't going to do this, but I figured I would add to it. So here is can I share this tab instead? I can share this tab instead. So here's an interesting post. And this is from Kendra Little. So Kendra, let me see if I can see the original post. Because there's a number of things that I think it was a bit like the game of telephone, right? Where this guy, and I know I talked about this the other day when I did the previous live stream, but this was something that I think that in the run up to the new shiny and catching all of this, I think we're forgetting the fundamentals, right? So he was talking with someone looking to get a job as a data engineer. Let me see if I can make that bigger. There we go. Unfortunately, he was learning about LLMs and other ML stuff. Those are not data engineering skills. Are they adjacent to data? Is LLMs and ML adjacent to data engineering? Absolutely. But those are not data engineering skills. Those are AI engineering skills. But semantics being semantics. And, semantics, right? That seems to be the word of the year, no matter what the dictionary says. This is true. 99% technology are using old, boring technologies like SQL and SSIS. I wouldn't say it's boring, but here's the thing: when you're dealing with back-end systems, back-end data systems, we all know that those are loaded with technical debt, and those are very high risk to move from one platform to the other. Right? You could say the same thing about Oracle RDBMS. You could say the same thing about DB2. Right? DB2 has been around a long time, right? Probably longer than most people watching this stream. Yet it is still the backbone, certainly mainframes, it's still the backbone of a lot of enterprises, right? And there is some truth to this, right? The fundamentals never really do go out of style. And again, this is also true. But I think she interpreted it that while not running after every shiny thing, don't learn SQL Server and SSIS. Yes and no. She's right and she's wrong. Should you learn SQL Server? Well, I mean, if you're gonna, certainly you should learn SQL. Learning SQL is a key aspect that every data scientist and every data engineer obviously needs to know, right? SQL is kind of the lingua franca for data engineering. I would amend this. I would say don't only learn SQL Server and SSIS. SSIS, Microsoft has made, and I say this as someone who sold, data cloud solutions at Microsoft. A lot of customers, even 4 or 5 years ago, were very hesitant to move a lot of their core data systems to the cloud, right? We call them server huggers. Now I call them smart. When you look at kind of the issues around data privacy, data residency, regulations around data, both in European Union, Latin America, the Middle East, and to a certain extent, I think you see that more by vertical in the US. And the cost of migration and repatriating data becoming back in fashion, I still think it's worth learning these tools, right? Should it be your primary focus? No, but you should at least have some kind of basic awareness. Now, going back to what Andy wrote, who has made a pretty good career, that he uses T-SQL, SSIS, Azure Data Factory, Fabric, and all these other technologies. And it's not really a Microsoft thing, right? Like, it's not a Microsoft thing, right? There's plenty of stuff out there. Now, I've noticed there's kind of like you have in geology, right? Like stratification of, if a technology is X number of years old, that tends to be in one data platform. If it's X minus 10 years old, it's in another, and so on and so on, X minus 20. You kind of see this particularly writ large in data warehousing, right? Versus data lakes, right? So data warehousing was an outgrowth of traditional RDBMSs. Data lakes tend to be more kind of the new wave of doing things, where just capture all the data. Don't worry about the schema. Just grab everything you can, which, if not done properly, that data lake becomes a data swamp and you have other problems. But the notion of capturing all the data is a relatively new phenomenon because storage prices have come down dramatically. The compute prices have also come down dramatically, um, unless you're talking about GPUs, but that's another story. All of this technology does evolve. So she's right on that. I mean, maybe it's more correct if it were to be, don't base your career on SSIS data factory, right? Because who knows what the next 10 years will be, right? At some point, data lakes themselves are going to be seen as a quaint old technology. You're already seeing a little bit of this now, right? Where everything's about LLMs, training for LLMs, fine-tuning LLMs, all of that stuff. Now, I think we are facing kind of a new hype wave of agentic AI, right? And going back to that, you know, diagram with the poop emoji, it's true, right? Data engineering is going to be more important than ever. And a lot of the data that's here, if it's not stored in relational databases, they're going to be stored in documents, right? And there's already a lot of ways that you can process and parse documents. Dockeling would be the one that we use for RHEL AI or Red Hat AI. But that is going to be the next wave. How do you take this data that's locked in these documents, whether they're in data lakes, SharePoint sites, Windows file shares, right? All of this stuff is there. How do you ingest that in a way that will produce a good result on the other end, as it would manifest itself as a large language model or a fine-tuned large language model or even RAG, right? So it's interesting to see this debate on unfold, because you see there's a lot of comments here and things like that. And I don't think that SQL Server is going away anytime soon, right? It is fundamental to the platform that they're building, which is essentially what we would call Fabric. But it's just going to be one component of it. Moving data around, whether you're doing it in a Spark job, an Azure Data Factory, or SSIS, the fundamental is there, right? You have data in one format, you perform a task, you modify the data, and you push it somewhere else. That's a pipeline. That's a fundamental skill. I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. And I just think that learn what you can while you can. If you learn what you can while you can, and you have to continuously learn, that's really the key here, right? Would I advise my children to learn SQL Server and all this stuff? Yeah, I would, but you know, these are not going to be the best paid skills in 10, 20 years from now. SQL Server didn't exist when I was in college, right? Most of the databases there were Informix, and we trained on Informix because there was an alumnus from the college was a big shot in Informix, right? You say Informix today, most of you probably like, what? What's Informix? Right? But my professors were the original architects on DB2 at IBM, right? So they clearly, the fundamentals haven't changed, right? A SQL join is a SQL join, whether it was done back when Kurt Cobain was alive versus today, right? The fundamental skill hasn't really changed. The packaging that it's in and some of the consequences of said designs do kind of change more rapidly. So I actually put a comment in here, which I kind of, I put two comments. One, fundamentals never go out of style. And secondly, pointing out that the original post was this budding data engineer was learning LLM technologies, which is not data engineering tech. And the job descriptions and requirements. There's a typo there. I wonder if I can go and edit that. There are notoriously, particularly in IT, disconnected from reality, right? Some of these job requirements you see on job descriptions, they want like a, ridiculous amount of skills, ridiculous amount of experience. for another unrealistic expectation of pay and RTO, but that's another conversation. But as much as a lot of these hiring managers want to implement the new shiny stuff, the primary goal is keeping the lights on, keep the business in business, right? And there's also the matter that, back end data systems, they tend to have a longer shelf life, right? It's not unusual to have an app on your phone that gets updated a couple of times a month, right? A little extreme, but not impossible. But it's almost, and you would see a complete redesign in some cases, once or twice a year, right? That's not unheard of. But to redesign your entire data estate, data engineering backend processes, that is something that does not happen every year, maybe every 5 years, usually every 10 years, right? Like, so it's not something that happens often. So in that regard, back end systems do have a longer shelf life, and the turnover is not quite as dramatic. And if there is new technology that gets implemented, it tends to be bolted on as opposed to ripped and replaced. And I say this as someone who wrote a lot of Windows apps, right? The client technology used to also have a long shelf life. You don't see that anymore with web deployments and app stores and things like that. The friction to go from version 1 to version 1.x or 2.0 of a particular client installed application is basically gone, right? You had not seen that type of innovation in backend server technology, particularly when it comes to data, right? Particularly when you're touching RDBMSs, right? Because the schema, if you change the schema and you don't do it carefully, and you don't do it with care and concern, you break a lot of things, right? So I think that plus general inertia do tend to keep these systems around longer than usual. All of which is to say, you have to always be learning. And speaking of which, I landed a new certification today, or I finished a new class today. Let's see. Oh, and I got a kudos from Pluralsight. Thanks, Pluralsight, if you're watching this. Um, Trying to learn more Linux, basically, because I think it's going to be a key skill. Oh, can I? Linux is going to be a key skill. It already is a key skill. Let's not kid ourselves. And with the Windows 10 end of life basically staring us down now in about 10 months, give or take a week, I have a lot of hardware here that just will not gracefully go into Windows 11. Microsoft has kind of made it clear, like, well, you could install it, but you're on your own. I just don't like the attitude, honestly. And this is someone who I was an early adopter of Windows 8. I have had early versions of every operating system of Windows since 3.11, right? Whether it was NT4, whether it was Windows 95, 98, I skipped Windows ME, but Windows 2000, XP, Vista 7, 8, 8.1, 10, you name it. Except Windows 11 there were some things with Windows 11 I didn't like, design choices, architecture choices. Although I do have, full disclosure, I do have Windows 11 running on this, because I do like a lot of the changes they made for Windows subsystem for Linux. Plus the stupid window pinning thing where you can kind of select that. I do kind of like that. It is enough to ignore a lot of the other decisions that were made. And these are not major things, right? The TPM requirement, I can ease a snap of the finger, setting on a registry, that could be fixed, right? The amount of e-waste that's going to create is inexcusable. And to do it so rapidly, I see in the comments, yeah, that's why I was ousted of the MVP program. No, that's not why. I wasn't ousted, I was just not renewed. And a lot had to do with family situation. We were adopting the baby, and there was a lot of family concerns and issues over the last, maybe like 14 months now. But whatever, you know. And I don't harbor any ill will towards Microsoft, or I love Microsoft, right? I love what the stock has done, right? And I still run Windows. Like I'm the only guy on my team, only person on my team that runs Windows on a daily basis, right? So I still love Windows. I just don't like some of the choices that were made with 11. And I was kind of hoping that by now there'd be 11.1 or Windows 12, where there would be some kind of course correction. I am puzzled at the lack of course correction, but whatever. And you even see this, like the Windows vloggers and bloggers have kind of said, like one week they said that they were going to do this, next week they kind of implied something else. I still think that's yet to be determined. We'll see. But in any case, I have a lot of old hardware, and you know what? Linux is great for that, right? I got Mint running on this laptop. This machine boots up perfect with all 6 monitors on Ubuntu, and that machine there is actually a Mac. So I think one lesson I've learned over the last 10 years is don't go all in on one platform. Learn it all, which is a good segue back to our discussion here. Assuming I can find it. Assuming I can find it. There it is. If you want to get into the IT field, you just got to be committed to continuous learning, because no matter what you do, no matter what school you go to, no matter what you do, the stuff you will learn in class, the fundamentals won't change, right? A compiler is a compiler, binary is binary. Well, until quantum computing comes around, but that's something else. But SQL Server was not a product when I was in school. C# did not exist. Java was an experimental project for embedded systems at Sun Microsystems. JavaScript hadn't existed. I think Andreessen was also still in college, working at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Stuff changes quickly in this industry. And if you're not committed to learning constantly, whether this is not the industry for you, right? The days where you could get a degree, sit in a desk for 20 years, do the same thing, what you learned, and then retire and move to Florida, well, that's kind of over, right? You have to continuously learn, right? The stuff I work on a day-to-day basis now did not exist a year ago, right? RHEL-AI, actually about a year ago, they were discussing this at a post-conference kind of dinner or something like that, right? But it has been productized and launched within 6 months, right? And that's about 6 months since the launch of the product, right? That it would have been unheard. It's impressive today, but it would have been unheard of back in the day. And like as recently as like 5-10 years ago. So final advice, always be learning. With that in mind, I'm going to end the stream because I've got some training courses to review, because one of my responsibilities is actually making sure that people at Red Hat are versed up in our projects and our latest products and versions and things like that. So actually works out really well for me, right? Because I've become this kind of like online course kind of maniac, right? With Nat, yes, Andy, in case you're wondering, I see the chat. 214, right? And all of this really started when I was in 2016, right? About 8 years ago, more give or take a couple months, when I was told you have to move to Seattle, and I had family obligations here on the East Coast, and I just didn't want to do. I couldn't do it, right? It's not that I didn't want to, I just couldn't. And that's when I decided to like take 6 months off, just retool, get deep into this data science thing, which I had already kind of been dabbling in. I had this aha moment at the Microsoft Research Conference I got to, and the rest, as they say, is history. So with that in mind, always be learning. And I am going to play the outro graphics. Oh yeah, and because I'm also on YouTube, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good one. And comment below about topics you would like to see, or if you would like to be a guest on a live stream.